Hello and welcome to Move the Line, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Ryan Noonan, joined here by two of my closest friends. Connor Allen, as always, back season 7 of Move the Line, Connor, which is absolutely insane. You were in high school when we started the show. People don't know, which is pretty wild. And joined today by my other work wife, the better looking half of the BetSperts Golf podcast, the worst looking half of the Deep Dive podcast. It's our friend Andy Molitor. What's going on, buddy?
Hard to compete. Yeah, hard to compete with Drew on that. He is a handsome beast. But yeah, enjoy talking to you. I didn't get to talk to you. We didn't do a golf show this week because it is a hole in the golf schedule. There's no tournament, which kind of worked out because we are cramped as it is this week, getting everything in with the start of everything. And boy, I somehow have one more fantasy league than I did last year. That was against my New Year's resolutions. Nobody has a bye this week. Everybody's playing. I got a Friday game. I almost haven't even told my wife yet that Friday night I'm probably indisposed. Might do a halftime show, but a lot of fun. I enjoy this part of the year. It's all the homework you've done for 10, 15, 30 weeks comes together here.
Yeah, I got to actually get out there and start to play. Connor, what's going on, bud?
Yeah, not much. It is weird handicapping week one because I'm like looking at it, I'm like, well, we don't have really any season-long metrics other than like our deep dive, divisional previews that we did. And so I'm like, well, I guess we'll just rehash some of that and see how it matches up here. I did find a couple of good tidbits here in the first few games that I think we're going to talk about. But overall, I think we played some early stuff, like, I don't know what, in like July, maybe we had a week one show, something like that. And we can touch on those eventually, but I think that those look actually pretty good, at least the ones that I put out. I don't know. I don't even remember what you put out either. So
yeah, I'm not sure I do either, but that's okay. We can go around. We're going to kind of highlight some of the best games on the slate, kind of touch on what we think there, maybe some angles there are too. And then, see what the guys like too. What else are we looking at here? Might be some favorite bets, some favorite angles, just some matchup specific stuff that we're looking at here for week one as we get started. Like Connor said, these games are kind of unique. They've obviously been, as mature as a market as you can get with week one being out there, for a very long time. Obviously, limits jump up here a little bit here as we get closer. You start to see some movement. We've seen a little bit of that here in the last 24 hours in some spots, but yeah, I think it's a good exercise still to go through and talk about what we like here. So I want to remind folks, we got 2 episodes of Move the Line each week. This is the Wednesday game by game previews. Friday is prop drop. If you want to come back, you can find Move the Line wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, rate, and review. All those things help us out a ton. You can also find it on our 4for4 Bets YouTube channel as well. If you'd rather look at our faces, you can do that too. Wherever you are, subscribe. Again, we appreciate those things very, very much. If you want to get the official plays, all the things that we do over at 4for4 on the betting side, you need the betting subscription. Whether you're doing anything in terms of football speculation, you're in too many leagues like Andy is, you're playing season-long, DraftKings, DFS, whatever it is, underdog, pick'em games. The betting sub gets you access to literally all that we have, all the tools, all the articles. Again, the Discord, which is really all you really want to be, where all the official picks are pushed through to. So lots of cheap ways for you to do it. Best way right now, you want to get your first month, just $10, promo code trophy. So head over to 4for4.com/plans, get the betting subscription, use that promo code, get you in just a little. It's usually $59 for a month, just $10 to get started, where you just lock in the annual price and get yourself situated over there. We also have some partners out there too. Great deal with Rebet right now. The new sweepstakes pick'em sites, quote unquote. I love the loopholes that these companies find, but hey, good on them. Find ways to get in the space. Connor just said, I'm pretty excited. Rebet has Prop Builder baked in a little bit now too. So maybe there's something for Rebet. So head over to the Twitter site, 4for4 at 4for4 football. You can get all the information, lots of different ways to get access to it for pretty cheap.
What's the deposit match over Rebet? What do they have right now?
I think it's 100, right? Yeah.
100.
If you're a prop builder guy anyway, you're playing it in the nether regions of the Caribbean and Central America kind of stuff. Why not get $100 free with the deposit match? Deposit match is free money.
Free money.
So you bet.
You're in a spot without legal sportsbook. Rebet is available in 46 states, and you have access to Prop Builder through that. pretty interesting. So again, if you have any questions specifically, reach out to us. Happy to help walk you through that and get you started. So, all right, guys, let's take a look at some of the better games here on the slate. We got some, I think, marquee matchups, some divisional games, some playoff rematches, some stuff that I think matters quite a bit at the top. First one I want to talk about, we'll touch on the Thursday, Friday stuff at the tail ends, but I'm really intrigued by this Houston and Indy game. Let's see where we're at now in terms of any market that's happened live. I think we're at 2.5 on the Houston side. This has moved a little bit in the last couple of weeks. We are out to 3 on, well, we're out to 3 in a lot of spots. 2.5 still available on FanDuel. Totals out there at 48.5. Obviously, a couple of divisional foes that split matchups last year. Exciting rookie coaches. I think that game last year, Week 18, was like basically for a playoff spot and for Coach of the Year in a lot of ways here too. CJ Stroud coming into the second year, Connor. Obviously, I've been excited about the prospects of what can happen when you pair Anthony Richardson with Jonathan Taylor. We saw 2 snaps for those guys last year. So like we really didn't get to see that upside. And yeah, I'm excited. I mean, Houston's still kind of the belle of the ball. Pretty popular pick here. Talk to me about this matchup.
Yeah, this game is pretty interesting. Last year, they combined for 135 and 138 snaps in their 2 games. I think both defenses are improved. Houston had a really strong run defense last year, but interestingly enough, like their 2 worst games in run defense were against Indy. Both Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, crushed them last year. And on the other side of the ball, the Texans offense here started the season off like running the ball a ton on first and second down. Weeks 12 on, Bobby Slowick ramped up their pass rate over expectation. It was like 51% first on pass rate, which was top 5 or 6 in the league. Before that, they were like bottom 3 in the league. So essentially, as they trusted Stroud more, they were passing the ball way more on early downs. And now you add in Stephon Diggs, you add in a little bit better offensive line. Like I think that they're in a good spot here to throw the ball a ton in a fast-paced game. And the matchup for this passing game is really interesting. Gus Bradley plays one of the highest rates of cover 3 in the league. We know that's exactly what Gus Bradley does. It was at 48% last year, 49%. Stroud last year against cover 3 was one of the best in the league. 8 touchdowns, 0 picks, averaged 8.7 yards per attempt. So I expect him to have a ton of success, obviously with the weapons, with maybe a little more pass heavy here. Now, a lot of that's factored into the line. I mean, we're looking at, as you mentioned here, the Texans near 3-point favorites, 48.5 point total. If the Colts are still cooking, though, like I think that we can get over this total, especially if we see a little bit of pass heavier start from Houston. But I'm not sure if I want to lay the number with Houston because I am really interested in this Colts offense, as I know you've talked about throughout the offseason.
Yeah, I like Shane Steichen here, Andy. I like that they play with pace. I like the stuff on the Slowick run splits because the dude loved to run into loaded boxes on first and second down early in the season, which I think limited some of their upside. But I do think there could be fireworks if this is cooking a little bit. 48.5, we're kind of getting that baked out into the market here. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm pretty agnostic to this one. I make it just a shade over 2, depending on the book. Some of the sharper books are closer to a juicy 2.5. I think like you look, Chris, it's more like a 275 if you split it out.
Yeah,
because it's like minus 118 to the Houston side at 2.5. You've seen it kind of go both ways. I think that's kind of where we're at with this market. There are people plenty happy to take those +3s when they get cheap enough on Indy. That would probably be my play if it got there. I know Drew did play some Houston early. He fell in love with how they looked in the preseason. I can't say I didn't like it either. Like the little bit of we got to see of the starting defensive lines, like, oh yeah, Danielle Hunter's very good, and this actually might be an improvement. Same thing like you talked about with the offensive line. Titus Howard getting to play right tackle where it's like his natural positions we played a couple years ago. I think you're going to have a really good tackle duo, even if it is a little questionable up the middle with Juice Scruggs, which is one of my favorite football names, but not one of my highest rated centers by any means. So things can be a little trickier to try to get this running game going, especially anything inside. And like you said, Connor, we had that. I believe there was a conversation with Stroud where he just kind of said, I'm ready to take more responsibility. I think we can throw more. I think I've got it. Kind of just him and Slowick getting together, and hopefully Slowick's smart enough to make the adjustments. I think that's what a lot of my notes were like. You see these one-year wonders, these flash in the pans offense that take the regression, the sophomore slump. Like this is where you find out if Slowick's a good offensive coordinator or if he landed in a spot where, oh, like I just had a bunch of good players and it kind of worked out. We had like 9 receivers that worked out. But man, if Diggs is like a possession guy and he's somebody who can support these young receivers and improve the offense, like it's scary. I'm leaning towards the over as well, but both the numbers are pretty close to me. I didn't play anything boring in this one. I'm gonna have to find some props because I want to watch this one.
Some ceiling Nico stuff, Connor? Maybe some, like alt Nico feels like a way that might be something we explore a little bit more on Friday afternoon. That could be definitely a way to get down on it too. I would lean the Texans. You get up to 3, it's a little bit interesting. The 2.5 again is a long leg if you had any interest on the Colts side. Getting the Colts out to 8.5.
It's probably where
probably interesting. Oh,
it's on the list. I try not to finalize Wong's, and good call out, Brian. Sometimes you log into StreamYard and it says maybe we should use the mic from your webcam, which is not nearly as good as this jalopy next to me. So switch. You should be able to hear me a little better. Yeah, it's on the list of Wong's, especially like I said. I lean a little bit towards the indie side here.
It looks like Josh Downs is probably not going to play either DNP today practice. I think he's more of like on the week 2-3 return section. So maybe, I don't know, look more towards like Michael Pittman, who crushed obviously with volume, like a lot of RPO stuff. So, I mean, that's probably where my mind's going to be. I'm still trying to fully conceptualize the Texans as like an offense, like how this target share is going to break down. But when you're running, 65, 70 plus plays, and in this game specifically, like, I think that, that can carry basically everyone. So I think that's kind of where I'm probably going to be looking at just some overs in this game from a prop standpoint as well.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next spot here. We got
quick too. Not the strongest coverage unit for me, Indy. Like if you do like props, you might get some of the best numbers you see all year. As far as especially some of these guys start to creep up over the year.
They're going to have to get interior pressure. I think that's a great way to get to Stroud. It's actually kind of the strength of that Indy defensive line too. So if they can, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, those guys can win over a Juice Scruggs up the middle. Maybe have some love a good Scruggy juice. Next we have Dallas on the road in Cleveland. I think this is a very interesting matchup. Same spot again, kind of another long leg possibility in terms of where we're at in the market. The Browns 2.5 point favorites pretty much across the board. Total between 40.5 and 41. Obviously some changes in Dallas on the defensive side. I think the Zimmer change from Dan Quinn is pretty massive just in terms of overall philosophy. And then I think we probably all agree, like, we just don't know. Cleveland is a throw your hands up in the air team. Roster's fantastic. A lot to like. It's just, what do we get out of the quarterback? Andy, give you the floor here. I think you got to lean on this one.
Yeah, I did like Dallas here. Just kind of straight up looking at my prices for this one. Not so much like I make them a favorite. I think they should be flipped. It's just I really don't like to play money line against the spread when it's under 3. For the most part, I'll just straight up go to the money line if it's 2.5 or better. And like you said, if it's a long leg, it's a long leg, and it certainly does fit into that, especially with some stronger defenses and hopefully maybe a little bit lower scoring despite some high-end wide receivers. And I caught some hell on this when we did our Browns preview because I guess a Browns fan thought I was calling Watson soft. So he played with he had a bad injury at Clemson he played through. I'm trying to think what it was, but I mean, he was tough as hell in college. Like, I'll agree to that, but I don't want to suggest he's super soft now, but sometimes a giant guaranteed contract can make you think differently about how you treat injuries. And it was very odd last year as far as like, is his shoulder good or is it not? And then finally he just got planted on it and it snapped. I think it was scapula, or I don't remember exactly what he ended up breaking. He ended up having surgery and missing the rest of the season. And now we have some question marks about it to start the season. It's going to be a really, really good defense. It should be able to probably manage the 3-headed rushing attack of Dallas. But I do worry about this offense keeping up, in the Jerome Ford era. I don't know. What do you think the running back split looks like here?
I mean, it's not, on the Cleveland side?
Yeah, I'm thinking, is it going to be like Ford 3 downs, or is there going to be some? what is it, Pierre Strong? I think he's like a South Dakota State kid, man.
I like Pierre
it's a little-
Strong.
I know, but it's a little shallow in the depth there at some of these skill position players. Jamari
Pierre Strong's not
Thrash
even
is
healthy.
Fourth receiver. Yeah.
Yes, that's the
I
problem.
didn't think Foreman was either. So I'm curious, what does this look like from a running back room?
I mean,
push back on that, Connor. I mean, we had some discussions on that. In the
yeah, we had some
discussions,
arguments about this, like offline. Noonan was interested in some Ford props. I think he stinks, but he has no competition. But
That's
at the same
what
time,
I'm saying.
He might stink. Or if he stinks, he might stink.
Yeah, what if he
But, like-
stinks for 25 carries?
Yeah,
See,
so
but
18.
when you stink for 20 carries to get 36 yards that he got last year in a game, and then like another one was like 18 for 35. I'm like, I can't get on board with that. I mean, like, could be catastrophically bad, which he's shown in multiple games. That's like unrecoverable. Even if your handicap is right on the workload, on the matchup, like, he's just unbelievably bad. So I agree, you're probably right, and I think it'll mostly be Ford. I mean, didn't Foreman almost wasn't he carted off like in the preseason? I mean,
and released at some point, and I think they brought him back.
Yeah, he was released and brought back on. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm wondering is like, what exactly is this offense going to look like? It's not it's a strong defense overall, not the strongest run stop, especially up the middle. The second-year guy from Michigan, who I can't think of his name, and then the guy with the really long last name in the middle, Oregonazua. Connor,
you just say JOK.
JOK.
Yeah, JOK.
No, I'm talking Dallas's the middle of Dallas's defense.
Oh yeah. I think that's the same way I would
Osa
pronounce it. Osa Ogo, yeah. I don't even think it's Osa. Osa's short for
Osa's a very good way to shorten that.
Yeah. You can run on the middle of Dallas for sure. I think that's going to be an interesting thing this year. Obviously, Deron Bland out to start too. You could have a little bit of Amari revenge home cooking here for a nice little Amari night. Again, it's all about the quarterback in Cleveland, but I would lean Cleveland. I'm a little bit down on Dallas this year, but it's close enough where probably the best leg again would be Dallas as a Wong for sure. But any other convictions here, Connor, you want to mention?
Yeah, I think that I think the more I dug into this, I think it could be like kind of a sneaky over here at 40.5 because obviously the Dallas defense got worse, down Deron Bland. I think they're starting, is this true? Kalen Carson at corner. Is that a thing?
I believe that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, that's not great.
Fifth rounder.
Yeah. And this this Dallas defense last year, they were good in EPA, but their success rate was trash. They were like 22nd. Their EPA basically all just came from like turnovers and stuff. I mean, 6 of which were pick sixes from Deron Bland, who's not even playing. So I think that their defense was a little overrated. They got worse. I don't know how good Cleveland's offense is. I mean, we've obviously worried about that. But on the other side, Dallas's offense here, Dak has played against like some teams here that play middle of the field closed coverage. So basically like a cover 1, cover 3, essentially. They got a guy like a safety standing in the middle there. He's been one of the best in the league against those, like 8.5 yards per attempt. And Cleveland plays that like 65% of the time. It's like league leading. So, and then CeeDee Lamb is also crushed against that. He's like 37% first read target share against middle of the field closed. Like, I mean, these two could have a field day here. Cleveland also plays a high rate of man, which Dak's been better against. Like, and we saw Cleveland's defense was awesome for most of the year, and they just got shredded by CJ Stroud in the playoffs. Like, I don't think that they're fully immune to teams that like are able to handle this here. So I think there's like outs here for an over for either side having success against like potentially overrated / good matchup on either side here. So I don't know. The more I dug in, the more I was like, okay, well, 40.5 is a pretty low barrier here. Like a 24-21 game. It would not be that surprising at all.
Yeah, the game plan should be for both teams. These defenses have strongish secondaries, and I know Bland missing isn't helping, but they can cover, they can pass rush. Neither of these teams is very good at stopping the run, or at least that's a weak spot for a very good Cleveland. But neither team has good running backs. Like, it's like, hey, our game plan should be just feed it, and we got Jerome Ford in the corpse of Zeke Elliott. So I'm not sure what the offensive game plans are, but if we have to go through the air, I just trust the better quarterback with the better wide receiver 1. Honestly, probably the better wide receiver 2. So I have Dallas as I have Dallas. I have this a lot closer. This is one of my bigger ones as far as just my raw numbers. I make this closer to like just a 0.5, which sounds silly because you'll never see somebody be a 0.5 favorite or a 0.5 dog. It's not soccer. But I'm off by like 2 full points here, and I think part of that is I didn't have the bland adjustment yet. But even with that, I'm still going to play Dallas money line. And you're right, we're wonging it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that bland is worth 2 points for sure. So Cleveland, I'm surprised. Cleveland actually, as good as the defense was, they gave up the highest rate of explosive runs last year by like margin. Actually, like I think they were like significantly higher than anyone else. So part of it was they also gave up by far the fewest number of plays on the season. Like they just never turn you over three and out so many different times. So interesting to see what happens in that game. I think it's going to be interesting and feels like an overreaction game. Anytime the Cowboys, it's week 1 stuff. It's like, no matter what happens, it's like sky is falling or, oh, we underrated the Cowboys. We let the Eagles get out to like minus 140 in the division, and everyone's counting out the Cowboys. They just go 10-5 in the regular season every year, and here we are. I think either way is what we get a little bit on the Monday morning quarterback stuff next week. All right, next is a rematch, playoff game. We have the Rams on the road in Detroit, which I think is going to be a very interesting game. It's I think Sunday nighter. Moved out to 3.5 basically across the board on the Detroit side. Total has been pretty heavily beat down since it opened. I believe it's our highest on the board now. Or what are you at? 50.5, 51.5, basically everywhere. I think it's going to be a very interesting game. I'm bullish on the Lions this year. Connor and I have touched on this, and we got a text kind of similar today. I was just, anytime I had the opportunity last year to talk shit about the Rams defense, I took it, and we were wrong. Although they were like just kind of middle of the pack, right? And I think Raheem Morris coaches face off, and Aaron Donald is kind of a difference maker. They're both gone, and now you pull, Ernest Jones out of that. Ernest Jones, I mean, linebacker, they don't make that much of an impact, but like Jones is a really good pass rusher. Secondary is a little bit weaker. I think this is maybe what we thought last year was going to be on the Rams side. Connor, what are your thoughts on Rams Lions?
Yeah, the total in this game is massive, and I don't really blame books or the market here, but at the same time, like I think it's just going to look a little different. I think that it's not necessarily going to be like a high passing attack from this Detroit offense. I think it's going to be a lot of David Montgomery and a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs here on the ground against the Rams front that's not very good. And so, I mean, we've seen the Lions do that plenty of times here, and I think that they probably realize too that like the only way that they lose this game is if Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua just have like an unreal passing game through the air and expose a secondary / defense that I think has gotten better, but is still not awesome in a lot of ways. And so if they're able to control the ball, run the ball well, and maybe get a couple of stops, I think they win this game pretty easily. So I think Lions minus 3.5 is pretty interesting to me. That's probably where I would play it at this point. But I do think that the Rams are going to have some success passing no matter what. Like I think that that's kind of borderline inevitable here, and that would need to be the catalyst for this game to like really blow up. Is like the Rams get an early lead by passing the ball, and then Detroit has to kind of like claw back and score because they'll be able to pass. They'll be able to do probably whatever they want, honestly, against this defense. I just think that their first point of what they want to do is going to be running the ball here, as we've seen last year.
What you got here, Andy?
Yeah, I'm pretty close on this one too, but I do have an angle I like is possibly a second half over. Just like there's so many scenarios where a team is forced to throw and is successful. Like if Detroit struggles out of the gate and they can't just rely on their successful running game, and they have an amazing run scheme, and they have very big, not just big, but big athletic offensive linemen that are able to get out in space and open up lanes when they're running outside. Like everything's beautiful about what they did, especially how we complained, especially the fantasy people complained about Gibbs' usage, but he was fresh at the end of the year. They have multiple guys who can do it, but if they're down, they're going to have to turn to more of the passing game. And obviously the best scenario for a second half over is like 24/7 Lions at half. And you just have, 35 pass attempts in the second half from the Rams with, like we said, Kupp and Nacua against one of the worst defensive secondaries there is still, despite some attempts to try to fix things. Like I might move this up eventually, but I mean, what they're putting on paper and like who they're rolling out there with, for now it's still pretty bad. You're starting a rookie on the outside. You need a kid. What's Amick Robertson? Like I didn't have good grades of him coming out of. Like he was with the Raiders last year.
Right.
It's like you got Brian Branch, and he's gonna have to fill a lot of holes, and he's very good. He's actually, miles above some of these guys. But you need Davis, Carlton Davis, and a rookie to kind of show out. I just don't see that happening. So I'm excited for some Rams stuff. Maybe second half.
I like that call. The Rams actually are one of those teams that have pretty sizable game script dependent tendencies. They will just run when they're up. And if we keep them in a situation where they're chasing even a little bit, they kind of put the throttle down from a pace standpoint, from a pass rate over expectation standpoint. So I like that second half angle. It's not something that Connor and I typically delve too far into. I know it's a specialty with you guys get into in the deep dive with your halftime shows, looking at different angles like that. Need to be thinking about that a little bit more. Yeah. People need to be tuning into the deep dive and the halftime stuff too. That's a good angle.
What's your take on the front seven there? How they're all just like 22 years old? Like so much of it was, hey, we got to put two hats in Aaron Donald. So like Byron Young is good now and other people are good. And then they're going to start, you're starting two rookies. Like it might suck to start. It might be a really bad front seven. It might just take some time to get everything gelled together. And again, it's hard to get excited about a team running when you have an over. But if Detroit's able to just run when they have the ball because they have a lead, they might just be scoring on three out of their 4 second half possessions anyway, too.
I think they dominate up front. I really do. I mean, Colby Turner was nice, but you can't tell me that Colby Turner wasn't massively impacted by playing next to Aaron Donald, who literally takes on 3 guys more than almost anyone in the interior takes on 2 guys, and still was absolutely outstanding. So, same thing as you mentioned, like Byron Young, like those guys might be okay, but things get a little bit easier when, you get you get a high rate of one-on-one in relation to how any other defensive end or, edge rusher is coming off, seeing a lot of 2-man coverage stuff. So, yeah, I think that they could really dictate it. That's why I would have concerns about the total. But again, also because the Rams then start to play what I think is their best version of football, and that's throwing the ball, spreading it out, 11 personnel, and letting Matthew Stafford cook. That is interesting, especially now that we've moved to a couple of 50.5s out there as well. Now we're kind of under a key number, and that becomes a little appealing. So 50.5 would be a lean pro Detroit, and I like Andy's second half angle here too. So we might have some
quick too. They did have a suspension on the offensive line during the late preseason years. Avila, Avila's in. I'm trying to Aldrich Jackson. They never really said what happened. I got to dig into that. I didn't find anything, but they're going to start swing tackle Joe Noteboom at left tackle, which is not as ideal as starting a good left tackle. So another point to kind of take away the Rams there. Yeah, not great. And then also we have Havenstein, I think, is limited. He's been dealing with an ankle injury the last couple of weeks too. So this can spiral pretty quickly here. When you already have your swing tackle in, like that leaves it pretty bare. Somebody called Warren McClendon Jr. could be your right tackle. Don't have a lot of info on him. Sounds like almost a Key and Peele character. Sounds like a victim of Aiden Hutchinson eventually here. Yeah. That's what happens. That's what's going to happen. The Monday night cap is I think a pretty exciting game, one that we're hoping to get to here. If we can get more Aaron Rodgers snaps than we got last year in prime time. Jets on the road in San Francisco. Basically the 2 main camp holdouts here. One is in and one is still out. So we have Trent Williams back, which matters quite a bit. We started to see some movement. This was out to 5.5 San Francisco, and now we're you got down to 4. We're back out to 4.5. Total is between 43.5, 44 in most spots. Still missing Hassan Reddick on the Jets side. Does still feel like a time if you're going to get the Niners. This is probably a decent time. I think you can probably plug Trent Williams in without really missing too much. But again, like McCaffrey, dinged up probably is a go, but I don't know if he's limited or how healthy he is. The Jets, Connor, we touched on this too. They have a pretty nice schedule after the Niners here to start. So like if you have some pro Jets thoughts, I'm going to give it to Andy first because I want to see what Andy says. I know what Connor's thoughts are on the Jets. Talk to me about the Jets, Andy. Talk to me about this matchup. I don't know that the Williams Holdout matters. I mean, there's a lot of continuity on that line. He's been in the league since Connor was in grade school. So if we're going to just keep making honestly, he's like 36.
Yes.
Connor. So he's been in the league for like 13, 14 years.
That's actually close.
Yeah, I'm not that far off. So I'm not so worried about, everyone's been talking about the holdouts with Jamar and, even the Ayuk situation. I don't think that's going to matter too much. And it hasn't seemed to matter how bad the rest of this offensive line has been and can be at times.
Correct.
It does, and I guess a boon for that is Hassan Reddick not playing. Like that's a nice thing. They traded, they swapped high-end front pieces there, and they ended up losing Guy and really not getting his replacement fill in because he's still holding out. I'm not super sure he's going to play, even though we do have an extra day. The rest of the matchup stuff is pretty close for me. I don't know if I'm going to have bets in this. It's going to have to be props and first touchdown scores. It's just so much strength on strength. Like I love so much about what Brees and Wilson and, maybe less so what the guys past that do. It's however you feel about Mike Williams. I think Mike Williams is very good when he's healthy. We'll see how that progresses throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have super high highs. I just don't have a good baseline for Aaron Rodgers. It's been 2 years. Like the guy was the MVP 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And then we just really haven't got to see it. I don't know what it looks like coming off the surgery. He's lied to us a lot. Oh, I'm ready to go. Week 8, let's go. If we're in the playoffs, bullshit. So I'm not sure I have a sharp enough number on how this Jets offense is going to look against, some decent pieces. Remember, we lost Hufanga for big parts of last year. We had other guys dinged up. Like if this Niners defense is completely whole, it's very, very good, and it's going to be a good matchup. So I'm pretty close to market here. It's a great game. It's one of those where you wish you didn't bet because this is just a banger. And I feel like, oh man, it's a standalone game. I got to at least bet some props.
Yeah,
Hufanga probably just real quick. Hufanga probably limited, so I'm not quite sure exactly what So probably
he didn't start on the pup though. That was like the plus. Yes. We were worried he was going to miss the first 4 games. I was going to ask you for an update on it afterwards, but it sounds like he's going to play. But snap count, or what do you think?
Probably snap count. But we also get Malik Mustafa in there, who's an absolute dog. Like I want Malik Mustafa in my life. That guy's ready to throw his nose in. But fun fact, Hufanga first tackle prop I ever made was
really.
He'll always have a special place in my heart. So we'll hopefully we get him back. I think the interesting thing on the defensive side there too is like Brock Purdy doesn't take sacks, so like he's been pretty clean, and it was one of his best skills is avoiding sacks there too. Connor, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm certainly going to have some random action on this that I'm probably will regret, just because it is going to be an awesome football game, but. Just got to remind myself not to bet any overs here. I think I kind of like the under in this game, to be honest. I mean, Trent Williams, and Ayuk, you never really know what kind of shape they're going to be in, right off the rip. So I think, and they've mattered a ton to the splits here for this offense. This Jets defense is, I think, one of the best in the league. So regardless, I think that the Niners have a tough time here. I think that they run the ball a lot, and it's just kind of like a slow, chunky game where neither side's able to get too much going, and then I think, Andy, you hit on the head there with Rodgers. I'm bullish long term. I'm just not sure that this is the week that they find their footing with Mike Williams still working back. It's basically just Garrett Wilson out there at this point. I think long term, when Mike Williams is healthy, that adds a little bit more, and maybe Malachi Corley becomes something. That's kind of interesting. But again, week 1, just looking at this matchup, I don't know how we can expect this passing game to be clicking on all cylinders right off the rip here in a tough matchup with no depth at wide receiver. I mean, Garrett Wilson's going to probably get 12 targets here, but he might only catch 6 or 7 of them.
Yeah, Brees. I don't know what your projections for Brees targets are, but he's going to get 5-6 balls thrown his way. It feels like you're going to have to do something, especially it's a catch-22 because I like continuity in my offensive line. Well, if your offensive line sucks, you do have to do something about it. And there's just 0? Is this lowest on the continuity score for offensive line? Bringing in Smith, bringing in Simpson and Moses at left guard and right tackle from Baltimore. Tipman was your center, but he's not good. So you have 2 pieces he kept that weren't great, and then 3 guys that graded out well in other places that are coming in. You have a very uncontinuous offensive line going up against a really good pass rush, especially a pass rush I think that's going to get better. A pass rush that underperformed at times. I like
1000%.
everybody up front. I like the whole front four. I like everybody. I like Floyd. So this could be a check down game as if there's a ton of pressures. And I wonder if we just don't see a ton. Like how this game gets won or lost is if Brees breaks some tackles. Like, is it like a checkoff for 3 yards, or is he making something happen and doing some Bijan Robinson shit and working his way down the field, even though his quarterback's not throwing deep?
Do we have any angle here in terms of familiarity with the systems? Knowing, Bobby Saleh obviously familiar with what Shanahan wants to do. Shanahan being aggressively stubborn, just being like, "Hey, this is what we do." So like it probably isn't varied very much, even though they've been apart for 3 years. And basically, Shanahan kind of knows where the breakers are in terms of like the scheme of what's going on the other side. So is that an angle at all, Connor, that we need to exploit, and who has the edge?
I would tend to lean towards the defense having the edge, but just because, I mean, again, like you mentioned, it, like Shannon's just going to do what he wants to do: outside runs, play action, hit Debo over the middle, hit Ayuk eventually down the outside. Like it's what he does basically all the time. And I don't know. I think that the Jets personnel, they have like good enough personnel, probably not to consistently win up front in the running game. Like I think that McCaffrey's probably going to have a solid game. I don't know if it'll be an amazing game, but like, I mean, I don't think that they're anything beyond like, fringe top 10 in run defense this year. So that they're probably gonna have an advantage there. But in the passing game, like even if they've gotten the Jets to overcommit to the running game, like their guys are gonna have a tough time getting open. So
I'm gonna have to talk to the guy I know that models sacks, because I'm worried about both of these offensive lines. I forgot you got, like I said, maybe it doesn't matter with Trent Williams, but Feliciano out in the middle, like Banks kind of sucks. There's some issues every year, and this might be a lower line because, like you say, Purdy just doesn't take sacks all that often, and maybe we're sitting at like a 4.5 sacks in the game, or I'd have to look what like average is for that. But I know a guy who does sacks and does pretty well with them when they're available.
Yep. They're hard to model, but I have a little something I worked on last year too that I continue to dial up. So, but yeah, I think there's some angles here for sure. And yeah, I think there'll be some angles. So, all right, those are the 4 games. We have a couple of obviously prime timers to get us started. Any thoughts here? You guys want to share any thoughts you have here on the opener with obviously rematch of the AFC Championship game, Baltimore and Kansas City? What do you got here, Connor? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I bet Mecole Hardman under. I bet that at like under 9.5. I think he runs fewer than like 5 routes all games. He's like wide receiver 6 or 7. Even if Juju Smith Jr. is not active, he's probably wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. He's behind Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy, who basically is like redundant, like just a 10 times better version of Mecole Hardman. So yeah, I think unders there are good. I'm interested to see what the Ravens do, because last time that these teams met, we expected them to go super run heavy against the bad Chiefs run defense. They said psych and then passed the ball like a million times. Lamar Jackson stunk, completed 54% of his passes, and Spags blitzed 16% above their season average and had a ton of success. So obviously the Chiefs secondary isn't the same without L'Jarius Sneed, but I'm just excited to see. I don't really know if there's the right angles, because if they run the ball better with Derrick Henry, then maybe they're able to take advantage of like a Chiefs run defense that probably still isn't very good, but their offensive line got worse. So it's like that kind of like balance of like what gives, and I don't really know the answer, to be honest. So like this game is very much a wait and see outside of betting like random unders on guys like Mecole Hardman, who frankly shouldn't even have a line.
Andy, any angles on this one?
I wanted to bet Baltimore pretty bad. I wanted to bet them straight up, but like you said, if the game plan is what the game plan should be, even with a lessened offensive line, you should be able to run, just because of the run scheme that's been instilled in this team over the last, even back to the Roman days. Not that far back. The Greg Roman, when you say it without the Greg in front of it, sounds like this team's been around for 2,000 years playing in the Coliseum, but it's such a good run scheme when it has an advantageous situation. That was a weird game. I don't know if they just got too cute by half and they said maybe we should use our strengths on their weaknesses. And we went out and got this running back for a reason. We have a running quarterback. I'm kind of sketched out about what the defense is going to be after coming off. I mean, it's a top 5 season in the last like quarter century.
$1,000,000%.
Maybe top 2 because of what they did. I mean, not only the turnovers, which some of that's luck, but some of it isn't. the points scored, the yards allowed, just everything was so electric. And then a mass exodus. Not only, people like, oh, Mike McDonald's gone. So is their DB's coach. So is their
linebacker coach.
Linebacker coach. Like 2 other guys went and took DC jobs from here. They had to elevate some kid. I mean, he's not a kid, but I was gonna say, I looked into this some article about Orr. He played for the Ravens, so he was on the Ravens roster when Pierce was a rookie. So he played with some of these guys. He's very young. He's inexperienced, but he's from the same system. There should be some bleed over from last year. But at the same time, I'm worried just because defenses never are sticky. And if this comes out clunky, if the game plan isn't good, if the adjustments, that's the biggest thing when you're playing chess with old fat-ass Bobby Fischer in red there. You need to make adjustments because Andy Reid's going to make better adjustments than 95% of people. And if you got, a young, inexperienced defensive coordinator trying to make second half adjustments and Reid comes out and he 4Ds your ass, it's going to be bad in the second half. So I'm abstaining from playing the Ravens, even though I make them slight value here. So I'm just worried about that chess match being a big old lopsided one right now.
It's a big old lopsided one, man. You lose me on the bleed over stuff. Charlie Weiss, Romeo Crennel, Bill O'Brien, right? Like, there's just so much like historical references to say, hey, it just doesn't always happen. And I think there might be something that for a young guy too, the Mike McDonald tree is pretty big. But I think the guy I think he's got a little bit of that magic juju. I think we see it with Seattle. I think we see it in the other way here with what happens with Baltimore early. Because you saw what lose the
Michigan
whole defense
did 3 years ago. Correct. Fix that defense quick,
right away. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm buying anything McDonald's. I think the offensive line deficiencies too are just that combination of, I think the defense regresses from, as you highlighted, a historic season in terms of sacks, turnovers, all the things that happened there last year to be perfect. The offensive line taking maybe a step back too. It's a little tough. So obviously it's 3, but it's 3 like plus 100, minus 102 on the Kansas City side. Maybe the best way is to wait and see if it's close and take something in the second half is probably a good line, but it's definitely Chiefs or nothing for me. How about the Brazil game? This was fascinating because these guys don't want to go out and hang out in Brazil. I promise you. So they're like doing walkthroughs and ballrooms and like on their phones and hanging out. It's not like, oh yeah, let's go to Sugarloaf and let's, nope. We're just kind of hanging out inside in Brazil. We're going to roll you up for the game. Packers, Eagles 2.5-point favorites here. Andy leans in this one.
Yeah, I don't want to disparage any cities in South America, but the bad part of Sao Paulo and the bad part of London are different. Because as far as, it's like going off resort in Cancun. Like, you have to be a little more careful when you're in certain countries. So I do wonder if there's going to be a less of the sightseeing that we see when we do these fluff pieces about everyone going to see Big Ben and whatnot. This is fun too because it's weird. The travel spot is obviously different. You get the long flight, but it's it's mitigated because it's coming off preseason where everybody has that built-in bye week. So I don't think there's anyone going to have an advantage here. I have Green Bay as value here. I'm close to pulling the trigger again. This would be just a straight up money line play for me on Green Bay, even though I have Philly is. I think I had them as my second best offense in the league. I want to say it was a decent enough defense. They were a highly rated team for me, but without the advantage of the home field, playing another top team, I have Green Bay as my 8th best team. Philly is my 4th. So it's close. I don't think they should be laying quite this much. I have a lot closer, especially with some of the things I feel about the Green Bay pass rush, the Green Bay coverage improving. That's another big question mark, though. I could look very foolish and be like, "Oh, it's just Joe Barry part 2 with another coordinator." There's 18 new coordinators in the league. We're going to see some questions answered this week. There was 2 divisions where all 4 teams have at least one new coordinator playing coaching. It's a ton of turnover this year. I'm not sure it was we've had as much, but I'm excited to see what the Green Bay defense looks like because I feel like I know what I'm going to get out of the offense. You don't have a wide receiver 1, but they're all like one wide receiver 1.5s. They're not bad and they're all good. You have a bunch of good tight ends. I know we have we have one's banged up a little, but Christ, it should be fine. I think LaFleur's a good enough coach to keep the offense humming. It's going to come down to Green Bay's probably their coverage here.
I think I know what Hafley wants to do based off of what we've seen him do at the collegiate level. He's had a few runs here, in the league over the last handful of years. I think they're going to play a lot more man. They're going to play a lot more single high than we've seen in the past, where Joe Barry was a lot of like just too deep, keep everything in front of you, try to sim pressure, drop your lineman occasionally, try to disguise things that way, but it was pretty vanilla. I think Hafley's going to go after him. It's not been something that Jalen Hurts has handled particularly well, either man or heavy blitz rates. And I think he sees a pretty good deal of it here in the opener. Connor, what are your thoughts on this one?
Not too much more to add. I think that Philly, obviously their improved secondary, new OC, O-line's still awesome. The offseason reports by the Packers D has been pretty bad, just like in terms of like joint practices, their practice, like basically, I don't know if that's Jordan Love just kicking the shit out of him, or
that could be the other side of it, right? What if that's
right.
What if that's it, right? Just the offense is humming.
Yeah, and that could be it too. But I do think most reports in the offseason are generally like positive and like rose-colored glasses, and it's very rare to hear like this unit sucks, and that's kind of what we've heard from multiple spots. So that's like a little bit of a worry, but it's not something that I'm like, oh, I need to auto bet the other side or anything. Just I think worth noting. For me, this game is mostly just like another one of those like these two teams are changed a lot. Green Bay basically changed a lot from last year mid-season offensively, and then their defense is probably changing a good bit here this year. So it's like one of those things where I don't feel like I have a really good grasp on either team. If I'm betting it, I'm probably taking Philly here just because I've bet on them all offseason. I picked them in the Super Bowl, I believe, for my NFC side here. So I definitely have
to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, picking to win the Super Bowl. There you go. So, so I don't know. I think Philly minus 2.5 here is not bad though.
Yeah, the biggest question on their side too will be that retooled secondary, because there's a lot of what if there too. I don't know if it feels like you're going to be starting the Toledo kid Quinion Mitchell, like he's going to be what, slot, or what do you think? Is it mostly slot corner for him?
I think he's going to be slot to start.
I mean, at least he's not outside, but Isaiah Rodgers and Darius Slay hasn't aged like a fine wine over the last year and a half. They brought CJ back. We'll see how that goes. Blankenship's fine, but a little bit of a question mark in the secondary. But like Connor said, it's for me, it's going to come down to like this front four for Green Bay if they can get pressure against top 2 offensive line, which is pretty hard to do when you retire a Hall of Famer. It's pretty wild. Like they backfield pretty nicely. I brought it up a couple times. The center played guard last year, got to sit and listen to Kelsey all year. Like he should be, that was always the plan. They backfilled a guard, and it's still a top 2 or 3 offensive line. And maybe that's the key. Maybe it's just, hey, we're going to do the thing where we run a bunch, where you're just going to see everyone's going to get way too excited about Saquon Barkley, because Green Bay is a team that you could probably run on a bit. And they have the horses up front to get. Like Saquon's still not old. I don't know why.
Right.
It just seems like he's been around forever. It's the guys that you really remember overperforming in college because he's been on the tip of our tongue for like 8 years. But he's not very old. I think he might have a pretty good year this year.
My favorite is Josh Jacobs is still 26 years old.
Yeah, it was like 2 years ago he led the league in rushing. How old is he?
I thought
now?
he was like 30. Like he seems like a guy who'd be like 28 or 29. He's 26. He's ripe. I mean, he's a young fella,
I think he's going to eat in this game. I think he's going to be fed just because that
was
I know he's
kinda
going to crush.
Don't hate the under here.
Okay. Yeah. Again, another great Wong leg. I lean Green Bay, so you're going to give me 8.5. I think that's pretty viable. Andy, you have a note here. You are interested in backing your hometown Minnesota Vikings. They are on the road. And one of the things that I am absolutely fascinated to watch is I want to see Brian Flores' defense against Daniel Jones. Flores is, in terms of like what they do schematically in his own world, in terms of how they bring pressure. Daniel Jones is also in his own world in terms of how that pressure converts into sacks. Because if you have a pressure to sack rate as a quarterback north of 20%, that's high. Like Russell Wilson's there. Sam Howell was there last year. You're talking like low to mid 20s. Daniel Jones, I mean, only top last year by Danny DeVito when he had his little run of starts. Danny Jones took a sack on like 32% of his pressures last year, which is just absolutely bonkers. And now Minnesota, who's just kind of been beaten up in terms of like preseason prognosticators in that division because everyone else is better. Minnesota's got some pass rushers. They can bring the heat, even if they don't bring any extra pressure, but they love to blitz. So I'm fascinated by that matchup. Andy, seems like you like Minnesota here quite a bit.
Yeah, I missed the number. I mean, some groups hit this in the summer at like +1, or if there's money lines, I'm sure they hit those as well. But even at the current price, I make this a little bit of value, and that's a big part of the matchup. I make this a bottom 5 offensive line for the New York Giants. Like you mentioned, Daniel Jones is pretty high on my can't get what's negative. Just call it negative sack avoidance. He's not good at sack avoidance. He runs into sacks. I mean, that's going to make your offensive line even worse. And it does feel like Miami. It feels like 95 for the Cowboys, but it feels like Miami, where you saw that Flores getting his guys coached up that second year, like we talked about with McDonald and at the Ravens. Like, he really elevated that defense once he had some time. And it's similar to what people have been talking about with McDonald and all the transactions we've seen in Seattle. Like, he needs to get his guys, though. He needs to get the right personnel in. And they made a ton of changes. Some of it was necessary in the secondary. Just they didn't have guys, so they got Stephon Gilmore and Shaq Griffin. You got Harrison, Cam Bynum, which are good safeties, but you went out and got Blake Cashman on the inside, and then a couple of good pass rushers to backfill the Danielle Hunter move with Grenard. And I know people dog on him converting too many pressure to sacks, but sometimes that just happens. And Andrew Van Ginkel's a very good player. Like, you're going to have a lot of pressure coming from the outside this 3-4, and it's decent up the middle too with Tillery and Phillips, Bullard. Like, there's a very good front 7 here against a very bad offensive line and Daniel Jones. And I think it just, like, Minnesota might be the 4th best team in this division. They can still beat a shitty team, especially when the matchup benefits them like this.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think Ivan Pace is probably best suited as someone that you bring off the edge, or as a blitzing linebacker versus a traditional off-ball linebacker. And you don't need him to play that role because you brought in Blake Cashman, so you can have kind of your interior
you can
thumper.
Rotate him out. Yeah, he can spell people. He can stand the on the, I almost said pitch like soccer. He can stay on the field all 3 downs too. Like, you got a bunch of good guys in that front 7, and if the secondary isn't abhorrent, it's like, oh shit, it's like a top 10 defense all of a sudden. Defenses can turn around like that. Takes a few guys in a good scheme.
Yeah, you get Josh Metellus you can put all over the place. You get Byron Murphy back in the slot where he's really good. He was forced to play outside last year. He got roasted quite a bit, but I think he's pretty good slot corner. So I'm excited to watch Minnesota's
Sorry,
defense
I'm getting
overall.
him wound up, Connor. I'm just talking.
I know you're getting him juiced over here. It's like
getting Noonan all wound up over defenses.
Oh man, Flores against Daniel Jones. I mean, I might give that like an only
time,
TV.
I don't want to be full Darnold, but like, this is one of the better situations he's ever been in as far as an offensive play caller, a wide receiver 1, a pass catching back, and really good tackles. If this interior offensive line is bad, maybe he has some trouble because he's not great at handling that kind of pressure, and suddenly he'll just throw terrible picks. But I think to start the season, Darnold will have some success. We'll see how teams catch up to that. And by success, I mean like middle of the league. Like, it's still Sam Darnold, guys.
I want to give you a contrarian take on this Giants offense in this matchup. The more I thought about it, that it's absolutely not going to be consistent, and it'll probably be ugly. But with the amount that Brian Flores blitzes and how good Brian Dable is at like getting the ball out quick, Blake Neighbors is going to house one. Like, this is like, it's certainly going to happen. Daniel Jones is probably going to throw 2 picks on some random sim pressure that ends up getting like drops 3 guys and he just gets picked. But I mean, Blake Neighbors, this has to be the game plan. Like, it has to be getting Blake Neighbors open in like 0.1 seconds to take advantage of whatever blitzes that they're throwing at him, which I actually have like an irrational confidence that I think with Malik Neighbors that Brian Dable can do on more than one occasion. So I don't know. I'm cautiously interested, I guess I would say, in what this looks like. But I'm definitely not betting the Giants. I just think that their offense could have success occasionally. It'll just look ugly for 75% of the game.
Yeah, that checks out.
There's
I
an
think
over
Minnesota
angle.
might be a little boom or bust with that.
There's an over angle because Pick6 on both sides are very live, right? Like, that's
yeah. The interception prices are going to be like -175 to the yes.
Yeah, that one's interesting. So yeah, I mean, I think that game is just going to be fascinating to watch. And the other one I want to talk about is I wish again this was 2.5 for a while. It's now basically 3.5 everywhere. Is the Steelers and Falcons game? I don't know. Like people forget that there actually is an injury report for Week 1, even though like theoretically everyone's healthy and it's the start of the season. Like the Steelers have an identity, right? We know who we think that they want to be based off of what they've said, who their offensive coordinator is, how they've built their roster. Unfortunately, they're running out a backup offensive line. The 3 interior offensive line starters are out in this game. And the only thing that the Falcons had coming into this offseason defensively that was good was actually the interior of their offense or defensive line. It's actually pretty solid with like Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata. Like those guys are actually pretty good. They're a little bit better now with Judon in there too. And again, now we have Raheem Morris in the fold too, who has been a talent maximizer, I think, throughout his entire career. Last year hung a gold ribbon on his wall with what he did with the Rams. So I think the Falcons, if they are who we think they could be in terms of like the best of the worst in that NFC South, maybe a playoff team and maybe they're in the mix, but you take care of business against a beat up offensive line against another quarterback who passes that 20 plus threshold from a pressure to sack rate. And that's Russell Wilson. So I think that the Falcons up front can get a lot of pressure here. I wish I would have got a better number. So maybe it's just Falcons money line. But Connor, you have any thoughts on Steelers Falcons?
See, that's the issue. Like, I think what you brought up here is like, that was the bull case for the Steelers, was like the offensive line. And if they're banged up, this Falcons defense obviously added a little bit of talent, throughout the offseason, new defensive coordinator. Like, I like their offense a good bit. Even with Kyle Pitts banged up here, I think Darnell Mooney's a solid number 2. So like, I tend to think that the Falcons are probably the right side at this point, just because I don't think that this Steelers offense is going to have any success, like continued success with their running game, which is going to put a lot of pressure on Russ, which, I mean, we know is like just an absolute disaster.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that one? And we missed the number.
Yeah, it was always going to be a little sketchy in the middle, wasn't it? Just with who they were going to start. But Sayamalu didn't practice.
He's out. Already ruled out.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like, that's not happening. Fatanu, I don't think that's happening.
I think week 2 at best.
Yeah, what's your update on the center? Are we Frazier's okay, right?
Yeah, it's Nate Herbig is probably out as well. Oh yeah, no, they put him on IR. So he's
Herbig was hurt. So you're starting the rookie right away at the center spot. Yeah, interior pressure with a guy who runs into sacks. He's, I don't ever want to put Russ. Maybe it's about the time of his career where I put Russ in the same boat as Daniel Jones, but he runs into a lot of sacks as well. His sack avoidance isn't what it used to be. And if you're getting a lot of interior pressure, like you said, David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, that is some of the strengths. Like you said, they brought in Judon from the Patriots during training camp here. So we'll see if he's getting acclimated. It's a good enough coverage unit to at least their number 1 can probably run with Pickens and shut him down for the most part if they're getting plenty of pressure. Yep. It's not a defense. It's not a defense who's going to have plus matchups all season. But this is a good spot for Atlanta, and my Atlanta numbers are stupid high for some reason compared to market. I believe in like, hey, what if this team didn't have, just horseshit quarterbacks last year, and a knucklehead calling plays? Like, there's so much talent on this offense, so I'm probably staying away from games like this because I am invested a little in Atlanta full season already. Gonna feel dumb about that eventually.
Yeah, market obviously reacted. I mean, 2.5 to 3.5 is pretty substantial to move through the key number like that, but still very much lean Falcons in this matchup. Let's see other things we have in the sheets. Andy, we have a couple of Florida games. It looks like it's going to be, again, to have a cross reference to the golf side. We're going to have some like Lucas Glover style swamp ass going on in Florida here this week. It looks like it's going to be muggy, rainy. And we got 2 games there. We got the Commanders and Bucks, and we have 2 Florida teams. So Jacksonville up north making their trek down to Miami. I know you got a couple of leans there.
Yeah, I did like that under. I haven't played it yet. I think some other people came in on that. I'm going to check what that price is right now. It's down to 49. I still think I do like that under. Despite the matchup, it's one of those where this might just go over by 25 points if the Jacksonville secondary gets torched here. But I hate the matchup the other way, and I kind of think this ends up being Miami builds out a lead and then is able to run the ball. I think this is a little high. I have this like at 47.5, 48. So I did kind of like that under a little bit. What was the other game you were looking at?
You said you like Tampa in their matchup against the Commanders.
Yeah, I'm getting some pushback against that, but I can get a cheaper 3 now, I guess, if I want to add on to that. I did like Tampa quite a bit, and again, that's just kind of a secondary thing. It's the worst secondary on paper for me, and I mean, Godwin and Evans are very, very good. And despite what we think about, I don't know, the only knock I'm ever seeing on Baker is just like, look at all these turnover-worthy plays. It's like, even that's not a really big sample. And that hasn't always been predictive from year over year with that. You know, it's like 3rd on that list of like lucky quarterbacks. CJ Stroud. Ain't nobody selling their stock on Stroud right now. It's just Baker doesn't have the, I guess the hype in the juice and the drip in the streets. So the Riz, as the kids say. He's fine, and I like the new offensive coordinator. You know what? This is my hot take for the season. I haven't even do this before I even deep dive it. I'm kind of out on Dave Canales. I don't think he was the reason. I think Bowles held him back a little, but if it's not the case, they ran some very weird schemes. They went run pass too often, and Baker bailed that offense out a ton. He's really good. I think that offense improves this year. So I'm high on the Falcons and the Tampa Bay Bucks this year, which feels like a lot of fun. If the Saints are good, I'm just going to lose all my money.
That was my Panthers handicap in the preseason in our show, because I was thinking, maybe Canales has got something, a little bit of magic with Geno and Baker, and then you look into it, it's like, man, they were so bad. They were like the worst first and second down team in the league. They ran into heavy boxes and just a whole lot of like.
And it was bad run scheme.
Bad.
It wasn't good run plays. I'm not sure what it's like. How did this team keep winning and you keep running back to it? It's like, Baker bailed them out. And if Baker had a bad game, they lost badly, because then it was bad play, bad Baker. Yeah,
just looking at my notes, a lot of fake sharp notes for Canales here. I think just results over process happened a lot. So yeah, that was from our in-season NFC South shows. Yeah, I'm with that too. I mean, a rookie quarterback on the road, but also a rookie quarterback. There's a lot more variance in that scenario as well. So there could be something there. And again, it's going to be such a different look with that Commanders defense with what we had last year. It's a bad secondary for sure. But, what does Quinn do there in terms of what they've done in the past? Can he hide a little bit of that secondary, and can they be a little bit more just better at generating turnovers? Because that's really what his calling card was there in Dallas. Connor, any other games you have? We wanted to keep it at a nice tight 40-45. We've already cruised over an hour.
A little bit over. No, I think we can get into some of the Wongs. That's the last thing on the sheet, right? Like,
I thought there's a bunch of them, and we just highlighted a few there too that we touched on. I mean, I think the Bengals, are a nice one as well. You can, 8.5, you bring them to 2.5 against the Pats. I mean, unless someone wants to make a Patriots case here, or overrate any Jamar Chase stuff. I mean, I still think Bengals at 2.5 is probably a pretty good angle there too. And again, I think we highlighted some of them that I think make a ton of sense. I mean, I like Green Bay on that side. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, the Bengals are moving. It's down to 7.5 on Pinnacle on the Bengals, which is kind of fascinating to me.
You know which Wongs I like? All of them every time, and just some more than others. I would have to look a little bit. Obviously, lower totals are better. Home teams are better. Teams with an actual defense is better. I struggle with some of the Wongs where it's like, oh man, it's a 2.5, but their defense is so bad, and it's just hard for them to keep it close at the end, even if the other team isn't trying. Just garbage defense gives up some bad touchdowns. So I'll put it in the newsletter. Like I always rank them on Fridays, and I'll play a bunch. It's my favorite thing, ranking them. Because it's like, well, they're all my kids.
They're all
I
good.
love them. I love them all, but some of them I love better. Like Dion.
You can subscribe to the Deep Dive newsletter if you do not. And the Deep Dive podcast, you guys are going live week 1 here on Wednesday night. Is that correct?
Yeah, a couple hours. I'll do some more podcasting. I'm gonna sit down and take some more injury notes. Try to get all the way. Wednesday injury notes are just a chore. I'm about halfway through that, but get caught up in that. And yeah, me and Drew, 6 p.m. Central Time, God's time.
Brian with a question in the chat here, Andy. What's a Wong? New verbiage to Brian.
Stanford Wong was he's a white dude who wrote under a name so people thought he was Asian for some reason. So if you want to get into that, that's a whole different story. Very smart guy who wrote some books on blackjack and whatnot, but he figured out that, you're paying to move 6 points. It actually is a lot more value if you move through the 3 and the 7 with them. So betting on a +1.5 to 2.5 moves through the 7 and the 3. Betting down on a -7.5, 8, or 8.5 moves down through the 7 and the 3 the other way. So those 6 are your most common Wong teasers. They're just long term. They're winners if you're paying -110 compared to. Look, make sure you're not paying -140 because then they are not long-term winners. But it does benefit you to find more of those when you're doing teasers. Don't tease totals. Don't tease basketball. Go to school. Eat your vegetables.
Yeah. So Brian's already doing it. He just didn't know the terminology, which is fair. So shame on us for, just keeping it too highbrow. We don't want to dumb it down a little bit here too. So good stuff as always, gentlemen. We appreciate it. Again, everyone subscribe to the Deep Dive newsletter, the Deep Dive podcast, Andy and the Whale. Fantastic podcast. Again, if you probably listen to us, chances are you're familiar with the Deep Dive as well. Come back, subscribe wherever you're taking this in. Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern with High Slot for our week 1 props. Again, we can finally get into some of our uncorrelated parlays, alts, ladders. We'll have some defensive stuff on there too. We'll have some tackles and sacks as we always do here. Appreciate you. Subscribe. And for Andy and Connor,
I made a video.
Ryan. We'll see you next
time.
time.